Trina today. I had the opportunity to meet Trina when we started working together with Mother Coders, and we're really excited to have her today to give us a webinar. And Trina, you can get started whenever you're ready.
All right, wonderful. Everybody able to see my screen okay? And hear me okay, just to get started?
All good on this end.
All right, I'm seeing some thumbs up. All right, great. Well, I'm really excited to be here. Julia's been amazing as we've worked together over the last, 6 months or so, working on getting involved. First of all, she reached out about this conference and connecting there, and it evolved, and we ended up doing some work and have some of you that are on this call today going through our Mother Coders training to bridge into tech. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But also some of the other work that my company Rise Next does as far as women in leadership, women in technology, and just overall diversity education and training. And so I was going to focus on a few different aspects today in some of those areas. So excited to be here and speaking with all of you. Just as far as the session today, I really like interactive sessions. So if you have questions, or Julia, if you want to monitor the chat, please post them. I want to hear what your thoughts are, what you're thinking, questions, anything I can answer. The nice thing about doing Zoom calls as an alternative to getting up and speaking is I can be a little bit more interactive, which is nice. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts and answering any questions you may have as we go through this next hour, right? So just to kick things off, I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Rise Next. We do community programs like we were talking about with Mother Coders, partnering with various companies, educators, and organizations to bridge women into technology. We also do corporate consulting and education and training for women in leadership, diversity, strategy consulting, and just really helping from an end-to-end pipeline management and employee engagement perspective, bringing women into the conversation and promoting them in their careers and supporting that. So that's what I get to do. It's a passion of mine, has been for decades, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. But I love working in this area and the work that we're able to do. And hopefully you'll get excited and want to work with us as we go forward. So we'll see by the end of today's session. So let me go over a little bit what I thought might be beneficial for today's session. I'm going to talk about 4 things. So we're going to break it down into bite-sized chunks of hopefully very impactful thoughts on women in diversity. And, I've done a lot of work over the years in diversity and inclusion. I'll talk a little bit about my time and where I got involved in this at eBay, and worked with their Chief Diversity Officer, Damian Hooper Campbell, who's now the first D&I lead at Zoom. So he made the shift right after COVID hit. You can imagine how probably big of a change that was. But I learned a lot through my time and experience working in the diversity and inclusion. And one thing that really has hit me the most is it's not about needing a D&I officer. It's more of you need each employee to act as a D&I officer. And each one of us has a role and responsibility in impacting change and can do that and are empowered to do that. And hopefully today give you some of the thoughts and thinking and challenge on things that you could impact from a D&I perspective and get involved in whatever's most meaningful to you, whether it's race, gender, sexual orientation. There's so much need out there from a diversity and inclusion standpoint that it really takes everyone being active and aware and involved in the work. So I'm going to break it down into 4 different areas. The first is, hopefully everybody's heard about the iceberg. And if not, we're going to go through the fundamentals. Maybe you can put in chat a little bit if you know what I'm talking about, or I'm completely lost. I don't even know, right? What's going on. when you say, what is the iceberg? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm actually going to bring up the chat here so I can see it if anything comes in. And okay, so we've got I haven't heard of it. Some of you may have, but we're gonna talk a little bit about that. I'm gonna do a little bit of intro about me and my background and how I ended up here that will hopefully relate into why this is so meaningful for me. And then talk about women in leadership and then women in technology. Both very critical things for me to that I'm working on, and my team and company are working on actively to help develop and change and make an impact there. We're going to tell you about how we do that and how you could get involved. So let's start with just a little bit about me. I often am asked, I've had a very, very long career in technology. So I've been in the tech industry for 26 years. And I get asked a lot, how did you get into tech, where we have this lack of women in technology? What was maybe different for you than others that came into the field? And can you kind of tell us that? And I spoke last year at Code to Success, which is, I don't know if you've heard of it, but Utah statewide and now kind of broader, getting more high school students into technology and coding. And I'm like, okay, how can I make this interesting? Talking about my journey and thinking back to my youth and what was really the beginnings of it for me. And I had to say it came back to the goats. So I'm a Utah girl. I was born and raised in Utah and grew up on kind of rural farms. Not huge, massive farms, but we had goats and chickens and cows and turkeys and things like this. And so I had this environment that kind of bred some creativity and analytical thinking at a very young age. So one of those is my brothers and sisters and I, so I grew up in a family of 10 kids. And my brothers and sisters and I would get together and we'd be like, okay, we're bored. What are we going to do? And we'd make up these games. And one of the games we made up was Milk Goat Wars. And I don't know if anybody's going to understand what that is, but you'd pick up a goat and it's kind of like a water gun fight, but you would pick up a goat and then you'd squirt your brother or sister with your goat and then you chase each other around and we get into these wars. So we were really creative in our upbringing and how we played, which I think bred some creativity later on in my life as I got into designing and building systems. And then I was also very analytic with these goats. So what I would do is I would take a goat. We had this goat named Casper the Unfriendly Goat. And we would put my little brother in a wagon behind the goat and tie him to it. And then I'd smack the goat and see how long it would take for my brother to fall out of the wagon. And so this was my way of becoming very analytical because I would do it over and over and over again. And I would measure from when he would fall and what the variance would be. And I would do these, tests on my little brother all the time. He probably owes his career in IT to me because he's now an IT director. So this was probably very, very much part of his growth as well, being part of this process. So it was, a pretty fun environment. But I also found that I really loved fashion. And, my mom would catch me in the dress up clothes at school all the time. Like I just loved it. But I also loved engineering. And I had this mix of fashion and engineering show up at an early age where I found my Barbies got really bored sitting in the Barbie house. They just did not like being in the Barbie house. It was like, okay, I've put on enough clothes and I've decorated enough times. I got to get out, right? So my parents had done this incredible thing of giving me an erector set. And I was able to build motorized cars for my Barbies. So I didn't have the pink Corvette. But I did build cars and put my Barbies in the cars and drove them around. So that was kind of an early stage, probably an idea of I was going to be heading into more engineering type roles as I got older. And so, you know, there was just these experiences I grew up that I recognized were probably like a little bit leaning towards you're probably going to move to an engineering role. There wasn't computer science, but it was at that point, I definitely loved engineering and design. So as I got older and I found myself in a situation when I was 18, I wrecked my light blue Chevy Malibu into a parked car. And due to this and some other traffic violations, lost my driver's license and actually was riding my little brother's bike to a fast food restaurant called Vittles. Not the highlight of my life, and was kind of like the point where I was recognizing I cannot live this life. I'd grown up in a very financially challenged environment. There was times we were on welfare and just didn't have the financial means to get into college, but I knew an education was my path to a future. And so I saved my Vittles dollars and kind of found my way into my first year in architectural engineering at UVU, where I then took a Pascal programming class that then led me into this wonderful world of computer science. And I quickly shifted my education and got a computer science degree, went on to get a bachelor's in business and information systems, and eventually my master's degree, and did an MBA, the executive MBA program at the U. So I've kind of hit all the colleges around the Wasatch Front here. And just love to learn. And my work started coming along with that because I worked full-time all the way from college till now. I've worked full-time since I was 15. So just learning and education and work and all of that has just built this amazing career for me over the years. And what has occurred for me is that I also found my purpose along the way. So while I was in my computer science degree at Weber State, I looked around and I'm like, where are all the women? And it kind of dawned on me. I'm like, I couldn't figure out where or why I was the only one. And so there was a couple things I learned through that experience. The first was to really find my voice. And there was a specific moment that happened where we were working on a group project, and we were working on this coding project, and the gentlemen in my program were working through this, and it was really complicated. And I kind of stopped and went, why are they doing it like this? Maybe they know something more than I do. Maybe, you know, I'm not quite sure why they're doing this. And I kind of built up the courage to go, guys, what if we did it this way? And they stopped and they went, oh yeah, that's a lot easier. Why don't we do it that way? And it kind of was this moment where I had to get my own self to recognize I have something valuable to add. I have a different perspective than other people that I'm working with. And it's a good thing, and it's needed. And we need more of that. And so I actually wrote my thesis paper at Weber State on why women should go into computer science 26 years ago. You know, it's been a lifelong journey of still promoting. Why do we not see more women? That's been an amazing career for me. And have had a lot of flexibility as I've raised my family, and I've just built this, like, there's something that needs to change here. And that's really where a lot of the work that I do with Rise Next originated all those many years ago. And as I've developed over the years, continually built that need and awareness of driving more diversity, supporting women in their careers, and helping elevate the companies that then invest in diversity and understanding it. So there's all these things, right, about me that I've just shared in just the last 10 minutes or so. And a lot of these are kind of the surface things that you would tell somebody. But underlying all of this are a lot of very personal things that have happened in my life. I went through a phase where I thought I was going to be a real estate mogul, and I owned 14 homes, and then the recession hit and I lost everything. There was divorce. There was remarrying. And that picture that's at the bottom of the screen are our 8 kids that I now am a mother to 8. I have 3 sons and 5 stepkids. There's a lot of things, right, that are happening that you don't always see for individuals that are going on beneath the surface. And so that's where I really want to tie in to the iceberg. So now that I've kind of shared that with you, every one of you have your own story. Every one of you have something that makes you unique, something you're bringing to the table that nobody else has. And what I've found is that everybody has their own unique superpower, and that is themselves. And knowing what that is for you and being able to tie into that and bring that to the world is something incredible. And when we don't include that, or we push that out of the way and don't allow those things to happen, that's where we're limiting ourselves. And so really understanding why do we get into a situation where we're not inclusive and we're not bringing everybody to the table, or we're judging, or we're not driving that awareness. And that's a lot of the work that we do from a diversity standpoint, and trying to decipher that and make it okay that that we all have these different experiences. We've all lived very different lives, and bring that all to the table. And you want that, right? As a company, you want to have people bring those diverse perspectives. And so really trying to take away the concern that there's bias. There just is bias. And when I talk to people, it's like, you know what? We all have bias. And guess what? That's okay. It's okay. Like, I have it. I've experienced it. I've done things where I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I just did that. Because that's something I don't care for. I'll give you one example. So my husband's company was up for an award, and they'd been growing quite quickly, and I hadn't seen a lot of the employees before. And I go to this luncheon, and there's a man and woman sitting at the table, and I asked the man if she was his wife, automatically assuming that she wasn't an employee, and she was an employee. And completely, I did what's like my biggest pet peeve is when people assume, right, that I'm just the wife. And so, you know, we all have them. We all have these things that just, whether it's society or upbringing or whatever it is, gets in the way of us truly understanding. And when it happens, the importance is to recognize it, interrupt it, and shift it. And so this idea of an iceberg, or a cultural iceberg, it's a really great way to visualize the hidden aspects of diversity and cultural differences that we just tend to ignore or don't understand in society. And there's so much that's misunderstood about other cultures unless we ask the uncomfortable questions and take time to look beneath the surface. And so it's really, this idea of an iceberg is like when you're working with people, especially nowadays with COVID, and you're on Zoom calls like this, it's really hard to connect. And more than just a surface level, right? We're working with each other, but we're not really connecting with each other, and understanding each other, and taking the time to do that is important, especially when it comes to careers and promotions and some of these challenges. That understanding and willingness to understand each other is critical. And I think the one thing I'd seen in this over the years, you know, as I've posted on diversity and talked about women in the workplace and things like that, I've had responses from people that sometimes shook me up and went, this is challenging for me. I'm not sure how to respond, where I had talked about, you know, experiences, microaggressions, or things that are happening to women in the workplace. And somebody responded like, well, people are just being a victim. And that really hit me hard, of that immediate response of not trying to understand or really recognize that somebody has been hurt or had something happen to them, and immediately dismissing another person's experience completely. And I think that's where you can really make a difference here if you step back and say, okay, they're saying something here. Black Lives Matter. There's something wrong here. What is it, and what can I do to change and better understand that? And that's what needs to happen, is that constant recognition that maybe my understanding isn't always right, and I have the opportunity to dig in and understand at a deeper level what's below the surface. So let me pause for just a moment. If there's any questions or anything in the chat, or anybody have anything so far? Okay. I'll leave time at the end of the presentation as well. If there's things that are coming up, feel free to put them in the chat, or bring them up at the end of the presentation as well. So one of the ways to be able to understand this cultural iceberg is to look at, you've got this surface culture, right? When we're interacting with each other, we're kind of at the surface. I know what you look like. I know what language you speak. Sometimes I might understand what your interests are at a high level, from an arts, literature, religion, what music you like, how you dress, right? You're making little judgments all the time and understanding each other that way. Things that bring us in common or have common connections, right? Those are easily identifiable in kind of that surface culture. Then you get down into this awareness that's the deeper, below the iceberg level. All these things, and this isn't even everything. You can't fit it probably on a page, all of the things that really make us who we are and make us unique, that are different, and that impact our decisions, impact our responses. There are these invisible cultural items that drive each one of us and creates us different and makes us different. And the key here is to recognize that. I'm not saying everybody needs to go and take a list and check off everything about everybody on like all of these things. Some people you could probably hit a lot of these and really understand, but you can't understand everything, right? But there's this understanding that somebody might be reacting a certain way because of some type of prior experience or response they've had. And an understanding and just awareness of that is the key. How they were raised, the challenges they went through, the things that happened to them, change and alter perspectives as you go through life. And so it's really building that cultural competence that allows you to kind of pull back from your judgments and open your mindsets and trying to really understand somebody differently, and understanding that there's a lot more here than probably meets the eye. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what it is to build cultural competence. So now hopefully everybody understand it. If you hadn't heard of it, and I appreciate those that have put that in the chat, hopefully that creates some awareness when somebody's talking about the iceberg or trying to understand something that you can't see everything. You're getting just such a small amount when you're interacting with somebody. But knowing that that's there, then what do you do about that? And how do you get more aware? How do you